Not that kind of dictator. What if I told you that there is an entire world of authors who speak their stories out loud? Look, I've always known that dictating stories was a thing that some authors could do, but it never really seemed attainable to me. And look, I've spent nearly 20 years training my brain to tell stories through a keyboard and a computer screen. And I spent all of that time trying to shorten the path from how the story feels in my head to how it comes out of my fingers. That is a skill that you have to learn. And the faster that connection between your brain and your fingers, the quicker you can write your story. But dictating stories is a similar skill. Instead of thinking about your story and typing it down, you speak it aloud and some kind of tool or software transcribes your words. This video was inspired by learning about the writing process of Kevin J. Anderson, who has written over 150 books largely by dictation. You likely know him. He's written dozens of books in the Dune world and in the Star Wars world, and most of them were spoken into an audio recording while hiking through the mountains. Look, I'm picking out parts of this book that were important to me, but you might get more out of this book. You can pick it up in the link below, and I highly recommend that you read it for yourself if you are interested in this other method of storytelling. For the longest time, the tools to do this were really rudimentary. Software like Dragon, the industry standard, was too expensive for the average person to try dictation. And on top of that, you had to speak in a very specific way for Dragon to work. You had to tell it when to include punctuation. You had to tell it when to include quotes. Things are different now. This portion of the video was sponsored by ProseWrite, and I truly believe in this tool. This is a small team of people passionate about writing who have created a transcription tool that is leagues above those older dictation softwares. With ProseWrite, you simply record yourself talking. I did this while on a walk around my property. I used my phone's voice recorder and I spoke the opening scene to a story that I've been working on for a while. The last thing that Mel wanted to do today was to knock on the door of the surely grumpy blacksmith. And yet she did, because it was her job. The wind was blowing, I was walking through dry leaves, I was doing voices for my characters, which actually kind of helped them have more distinctive voices in the story. And then I uploaded it to ProseWrite, and in just a couple of seconds, I had a 1,000 word scene all cleaned up and formatted for me. This took 9 minutes of speaking, and this was just my first time using dictation. And I was astounded by the accuracy of the results and how productive this could make me as a writer. What I really liked was that ProseWrite highlights any cleanup or changes that might be done to my transcription in yellow so I can see exactly what is my dictation and what might have been cleaned up by ProseWrite. ProseWrite uses different personas that you can configure to determine the amount of cleanup that you want within the transcription. If you don't want any, do what I did. Use the minima persona. Want some help cutting out unneeded adverbs or cleaning up your descriptions? Then you can select a different persona and enable different features to punch up your dictation. All of these changes are highlighted for you as you view the transcription. After dictating my first scene, I suddenly had this picture of being able to kind of tell my stories out under the sun, walking down the street or hiking through nature instead of sitting hunched over my computer. I don't know. You should give it a try. The first 500 people who use the link below get a free hour of transcription, which at my speed would be almost 6,000 words of storytelling. It's super easy to try, and I think it might open some really cool doors for you. So let's get right to the writing process of the modern day dictator. Not that kind of dictator. Kevin starts his book discussing how many different sources and studies correlate walking or exercise with creativity. And right off the bat, look, I totally get that. I often go on walks if I'm stuck on a story, and the act of getting away from the computer and moving tends to help me overcome these humps. The co-author of this book, Martin Shoemaker, is another prolific dictator. Not that kind. He provides advice on how dictation is a skill honed through practice. His first dictated story was through 6 weeks of commuting to and from work. and it came out at 19,000 words. But after continuing to practice that dictation, he wrote the first draft to a whole novel in that same amount of time, those same 6 weeks of commutes. This draft was 90,000 words. And he even dictated a Nebula-nominated short story in a single commute that would go on to be published with only a couple edits. A testament to the fact that this is a learned skill that just gets better over time. And that brings us to a question. Is dictation simply a matter of productivity? Now, Shoemaker speaks on productivity. He balances a programming job with dwindling time available to write, and dictation helped him write in times when he was available. His workday commute. I don't think this is solely about productivity. I think that you even tell different kinds of stories when you speak aloud than when you write. In my simple test, 1,000 words in 9 minutes, one of the things I noticed about the resulting transcription was that the pacing of my story was tighter. When I write on a computer screen, I think I'm prone to writing more description when maybe that description isn't quite necessary. But when I'm speaking the story, I'm aware that if I've been talking about description or something for too long, because I can easily feel that. I can feel I've been speaking too long without that next important thing happening. The first chapter of the book answers a lot of your questions about dictation. Things like, why? And the answers are pretty straightforward. You tend to be more creative when you're physically moving and you're being in nature. It's healthier than sitting down for hours in front of a computer to write, especially if you're writing after working a job where you're in front of the computer for 8 hours. It's productive, I guess. It's letting you write in times that you maybe wouldn't have been able to before. But more importantly, you might be done writing at a computer after 2 hours because you just kind of feel cooped up in your room. Like in this room that I film, I don't have any windows, and that would really get to me. But if you're out in nature and you're walking, you might be able to dictate for longer than 2 hours. So what are the drawbacks? In the past, it was that the dictators had to then transcribe the audio. Before dedicated software, this meant paying someone to listen to your transcription and type out everything. Then, with software like Dragon, this meant speaking in a very stilted way, period. Now, ProseWrite can make this just more accessible and easier than before. Most writers who hear about dictation probably have the same response. I can't write that way. It doesn't feel natural. Now, Kevin Anderson makes a point to note that the origins of storytelling for all of humanity were done through oral storytelling. Even the small stories that me and you, tell day to day are methods of dictation. The stories that you tell your friends or reciting a crazy thing you saw on the commute to your coworkers. That's all classical storytelling. That's part of being social humans. Storytelling is in our blood. Learning to tell stories through the keyboard is more unnatural. You had to learn the QWERTY keyboard layout, where to hold your little fingies on the home row, all the shortcuts and the buttons for your word processor or software of choice, etc. And then you had to figure out how to get that story from your brain and onto the screen. Look, dictation is just thinking the words and then saying the words. Then you're done. So is dictation like this magic secret sauce to just being a prolific and productive writer? Because it kind of sounds like Kevin Anderson can just spit out a bunch of words and it's a great story. But that's not quite the case. There's plenty of planning and plotting that happens before you dictate a story, just like how you prepare writing a story on the computer. That planning can be done by dictation too. Or you can split up your planning and your drafting into different steps and phases. So like Kevin Anderson speaks more about his writing process. He's not a pantser, he likes to plot things. And so he plans each chapter of his story out beforehand. Each chapter gets a synopsis, key events, how it starts, where it ends, and how it leads to the next chapter. And each chapter can be treated kind of like a short story. It has an arc, it has a primary specific scene, a specific dialogue and description. And I think that this makes so much sense for dictation. Like I can already imagine grabbing one of those like field note journals and putting a new chapter and necessary information on each page and just kind of speaking my way through those chapters. I mean, I'm motivated right now to just go out and do it. It just makes so much sense to me. Now, this is Kevin Anderson's process. Yours could be totally different. Maybe you want more planning, individual lines of description, or important lines of dialogue that provide foreshadowing. Remember, this is just your first draft. As you edit, you can always tighten your story up in those kind of important ways. Now, if you're not a plotter, Martin Shoemaker is more of a pantser. And he speaks on how it can be difficult to know where your story is going to go when you haven't really planned ahead. But just like dictation is a skill that you learn, so is improv. You hone these like storytelling muscles and the understanding of what makes a good inciting incident and what makes a compelling character moment or a compelling journey. Look, Kevin and Martin both spend a couple chapters also discussing dictation while driving. And I think for most people, this will be really helpful. However, I work from home. So if you're interested in really making the best of that commute time, check out this book for tips, for advice, for recommending equipment and how to do this like safely and smartly. And the very last portion of this book is dedicated to software and professional transcription services and how to use dictation tools like Dragon. But that's where ProseWrite comes in, and you can try that right now. Look, I'm certain you'll be impressed with the results like I was. The book finally closes with an example of how Kevin Anderson does his stories. And this is really interesting, and I highly recommend you check it out. He has in this book the notes for his chapter, the direct transcription of the dictation, and then the final edit of the story so you can see how everything changes. There's even a link here to the actual audio recording for the chapter so you can see how a professional handles dictation. All in all, this is the book. If you are interested in trying a new method of storytelling, I highly recommend it. Take some notes with you. Go tell a story. Go be out under the sun, or for me right now in the snow. Put yourself in nature. Walk down a city street. Find a park. If you aren't trying new things, then you'll never figure out the process that really works for you. Maybe it's dictation. Maybe it's something else. But you need to be open-minded and ready to try something new. You'll be writing for the rest of your life. Don't you want it to be done in a way that makes you the most happy? I hope you liked this video. For more writing book breakdowns, check out the playlist in the description. You can join our Discord and surround yourself with hundreds, I love being able to say that, hundreds of like-minded writers using the link below. If you like breaking down storytelling and its methods, then subscribe to this channel, and as always, thank you for watching.